of Stevens Point Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission meeting, recorded January 21st, 2026.
All right, the time is 5 o'clock. I call this meeting of the Stevens Point Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission to order. Roll call.
Fisher.
Here.
Guthrie.
Here.
Balderschweiler.
Here.
And Peterson.
Here.
All right, we got a quorum.
All right, and then item number 2 is report of the May 6, 2025 meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission. Someone want to discuss or motion to pass?
Happy to motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Sorry.
Did you make the motion?
I did.
Okay, I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 3, presentation and discussion on the draft Portage County Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan.
All right. So I guess a few housekeeping items before we kind of get to the nitty-gritty of all of this. First out, just to state the elephant in the room, it's been a bit since we've met as a commission. Obviously, as apparent by the approval of the last meeting minutes. With that said, I mean, over the last 6 months, there's been a ton of work that Director Badun and I have been working on in relation to this countywide bike ped plan, between administering the demonstration activities during the spring, summer, and fall months, between reviewing multiple drafts of this bike ped plan before it was ever brought to the public sphere, before you guys and the other jurisdictions. So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes to really make this plan representative as what's shown in the packet. So there'll be a lot more work going forward over the next few weeks and months, and refining this and then presenting the safety action plan before you folks, probably springtime, give or take. So just wanted to say that right from the jump. Some other housekeeping items: you folks are going to be reviewing it this evening. City Plan Commission will be reviewing it next week, Monday, the 26th. And then the other jurisdictions that are taking part in the local match as part of the SS4A grant, they're going to be reviewing this plan through the remainder of this month and into February as well. They'll be Portage County, and then the villages of Plover, Whiting, and Park Ridge. The goal is to have all your comments from the city and the other 4 jurisdictions compiled, brought before our consultant team, them making the edits to this draft plan, and then if you folks and the other entities are comfortable, we'd be looking to take final action sometime in spring. That final action on the city's part, the city approval of the plan, would be brought before you folks first, then Plan Commission, and then ultimately Council for adoption. I think that's about it for housekeeping. So next time that we meet, most likely as a commission, would be, if you're comfortable, would be adoption of the plan, and then the first draft, the first review of the safety action plan. So I guess what I foresee this conversation to be this evening is we're going to go over the plan as a whole. There's going to be some sections that are going to be less pertinent to you folks, especially when we're talking, for example, the rural area recommendations. But we're going to go over the kind of the highlights of pertinent sections of the plan. We'll get your comments, get your feedback, any clarifying questions for myself, and then Director Badun as well. So just in terms of the structure of the plan and really what were the main objectives, at least on Scott and our parts in creating the plan that's ultimately brought before you. So our current countywide bike ped plan was adopted in, I think, 2014, 2015. And one of the challenges early on that Scott and I saw was really the main stakeholder, the main actor within the county who facilitated the creation of that plan left a few years after the adoption of the plan. And because it was arguably siloed in terms of the creation of the plan back in the early and mid-2010s, when the main stakeholders involved in the creation of that plan either left their place of employment, or if they're citizen representatives, if they left Portage County altogether, it really left our current countywide bike ped plan to be forgotten, for lack of better terms, for the most part. And so the goal with this plan, kind of the planning process, is to try to make it as collaborative as possible, bringing in not only the county, but also us as a city, all the various jurisdictions, so that there's frankly more accountability on all of our parts to make sure that what we're actually looking to accomplish and implement in the adopted plan is being achieved in the years that come. You know, I think we've done a okay job as a city in implementing policy recommendations from the 2014 bike ped plan. Could we do better? 100%. And so that's really the objective, is to make sure that we're all keeping ourselves accountable. We're bringing as many people into the process and creating this plan as we can, so that there's public and private collaboration and, again, the accountability over the years ahead. So, structure of the plan, it's pretty similar to really most long-range plans. Really starting out, I'm gonna just kind of take it piece by piece, and we'll stop along the way for commentary. But so one of the main components of a long-range plan, regardless of the topic, is identifying really low-hanging fruit, short-term policy recommendations that the jurisdiction should take. And one of the objectives that Scott and I had in having Vanderwall create this plan is that short-term action plans, that short-term policy plans are upfront, early on in the plan, and apparent, so it's really transparent for us for what we can achieve going forward. So, talking about the short-term action plan, it's broken up into two different sections. Two sections being, number one, to build a network, a little bit more infrastructure focused, and then the second one would be growing the culture. That's more kind of the other E's, the education, encouragement, and the evaluation piece of it. So the build a network, the engineering specifics of it, policy recommendations in the short term, this would be over the next 5 years post-adoption of the plan, would be, number one, to support the incorporation of bike and pedestrian facilities in street projects using the same funding as the rest of the projects. Number two, applying for TAP grants when they become available each cycle. And then number three, implementing the priority urban area recommendations shown in that table on the right-hand side of the slide deck. And then number two, growing the culture. Again, this is more of the education piece. So producing some pamphlets, in this case the county bike maps, having collaboration with elected officials to make sure that they better understand the benefits of well-connected walkable and bikeable communities, just trying to close the knowledge gap for the potential knowledge gap for the decision makers that be. And then some of the more collaborative events, working with the school district, working with places of employment, of sponsoring particular biker walk to work weeks or bike to walk to school day as one example. So again, the crux of this short-term action plan is what's low-hanging, easy to implement policy recommendations that we as a community and then the other jurisdictions as well in the county can take one of these, run forward with it, and get some easy wins that hopefully can snowball going forward when we're trying to achieve some of the more long-term, harder to implement policy recommendations in the plan. So I'm going to take a step back. Questions, comments about the short-term action plan? Is there clarification, anything that you see problematic, anything you want to add?
When it comes to incorporating bike and pedestrian safety planning into standard street updates or repairs, it seems to me that we need a mechanism to build that into our process, and then a mechanism, ideally annually, in my opinion, to account for that having happened. I wonder if Director Badoon would like to speak to the plan to incorporate that into his unit's processes, and if that can be a standard process within any roadwork planning, that it can clearly be presented to council as per the bike ped safety plan, we are to include an analysis of whether or not this pathway should also be included in this work. This would be the cost. This is our assessment of that. We'd like to put that forward, and then some sort of annual accounting to make sure that as we move forward in road work, that has occurred and is being accounted for. Is this a good juncture to have Director Badoon speak to that?
Yeah, I think so.
Good afternoon, everyone. Boy, that's a lot that you just said. And I think we try to incorporate that. I guess maybe if anything is, it's really the transparency to which we do it. Because every time when we prioritize projects, we've always are looking at the existing plan to see what's supposed to be implemented. All things being equal, we prioritize those with pedestrian and bicycle improvements above those that would otherwise be, similarly categorized in condition or other assessment. So we're always trying to implement the plan. If you might remember, several years ago, we had some individual sidewalk projects, specifically to that, infill projects. Quite honestly, they weren't received very well. Of course, at the time, too, we are also assessing for sidewalks. So we would tell people, the only thing we're doing here is we're going to put in a sidewalk, you're going to pay for it, you're going to maintain it, have a good day. So we haven't done one of those in a while, but what we've otherwise done is transitioned our capital projects to, as I stated earlier, more so aligned with what was identified in the 2014 plan, to try to find areas where the road condition and other utility conditions match the condition in which we feel it's time for replacement, but then prioritizing those that have needs. A good example of that, just a few years ago in Algoma, when we otherwise redid that road, we worked very diligently, an area that was otherwise just a rural cross-section, no sidewalk, immediately adjacent to Metro Market, a large destination for a lot of people, to add sidewalks, as well as incorporate them on Texas and that block. And then we actually extended beyond the road project to extend sidewalk south of Jefferson in that area. So we're always trying to incorporate what was identified in that plan into our capital projects, because it's a whole lot easier and palatable for people to see if we're doing a large project to incorporate that as we've learned, then separate necessarily those out, into it. So maybe there's more education, transparency, that is what we're doing in the office to let the public know, but just let it be known that we very much so incorporate the bike ped plan and what its recommendations are into all of our capital projects, weigh that in against all other needs. Does that kind of answer your question?
Are they flagged as such when you're putting forward plans to council or to the Streets Commission, the Public Works Commission?
Not so much. I think what we do, we probably more like at the public informational meetings, talking about what improvements we're doing at those meetings. We often, bring that up when people are wondering about it. Again, I'll go back to Algoma, because in many cases, even like that, there was a lot of sidewalk added there, which of course, brought out a lot of people, questions from the residents there, and about the significant changes to their neighborhood. So, a lot of that is brought up in those. It's the justification for it and letting the public know why are we doing. As far as to like Board of Public Works and the council, it's been more or less just much like right now, telling them that's what we're doing. But I have to admit, with each project, we don't necessarily go through a reminder or point out what it is. Where we do try to point out things is if we're deviating from the plan. So if we're working on a road and we're not incorporating that, we did have a project like that a number of years ago when we were working on 4th Avenue by the university. We were doing some of it, there were some otherwise improvements there, but they weren't necessarily inclusive. So we widened the road to accommodate some of the parking. We didn't put the bicycle infrastructure because there's nowhere for the bicycle infrastructure to go within that project. So we identified it as, but we stated clearly that we weren't including that facility because it would have been just a bike lane going 2 blocks, really nowhere to nowhere at the time.
I appreciate those comments. I think one of, in reading the 2014 plan, I see so much room to hearken back to it in our day-to-day work or in our annual reviews to account for, so that we don't have to try to do it in 10-year chunks, what we can account for that we have achieved, or an explanation for why something was constructed alongside something that was planned and the why not. Because I think it would be nice to summarize that and account for all of those goals that we had accomplished. And in the day-to-day business of the city, I don't see that surfaced in the way that I would love to be able to point that out, and I just wonder if there's an opportunity, again, either annually or in like a call out in a proposal, like, green for alignment with this or that, strategic plan or approved plan by this commission, red for not in alignment but acknowledged, and this is the explanation for why that's not being budgeted in that project, so that those so that this doesn't just go on a shelf and you're following some of it, but it's not, we're not seeing sort of the fruits of our efforts when it comes to creating and approving this plan. So I'll yield.
Adam, how often do we do bike-friendly, pedestrian-friendly? Because that's a time when we often look at the infrastructure and stuff and what we've added since the last time and accomplishments.
Yeah, bike-friendly is every 4 years. Walk-friendly is just a one-time thing.
And maybe it's a matter of kind of revisiting that more so annually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to see those call outs or some sort of annual reporting of we're working together as staff to align with these policy documents, and these are some of the things that we have done in the last calendar year that align with those. I would love to see those, and if we can incorporate them into the proposals that are going through governance, hopefully they're not too arduous to then pull out and account for on an annual basis.
Any other comments, thoughts, concerns? And I neglected to say this at the jump. Obviously, this is a lot of information in the packet. If there's anything any ideas that you think of in the days that come, weeks that come, you're more than willing, you're more than able to email me your thoughts and suggestions. There's still time to edit this plan in the days that come, and again, this is a long plan. I'm sure there's going to be new burning ideas that churn up even after this very meeting. All right, so.
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
Something else that, if we're still on the short-term wins, I didn't understand the responsibilities and time frame, and I think they're kind of laid out in different places within the packet related to school, safe route to school plans and implementation. In talking with the school district, I understand those to be pretty woefully out of date and a concern for community members with kiddos getting to especially what they describe as neighborhood schools. So Jefferson comes to mind. There are a couple others. Can you help us understand? I see it's in a quick win area, which I'm so happy for, but I don't understand time frame, next steps, and responsibilities.
Yeah, so the Safe Route to School plan was adopted, I believe, shortly after the 2014 bike ped plan. I guess, Scott, do you want to talk or address some of those questions, talk about kind of the collaboration that exists between school district and your department, if there's, I guess, one, if there's any road projects being proposed in the near vicinity, and then two, just broadly speaking, what collaboration you have?
This is going to sound a lot like the last responsive part, because it's kind of how it otherwise works. So as we are trying to identify those, we have the bike ped plan, which in that case overlapped a bit since they were done roughly at the same time, the Safe Routes to School plan. So kind of looking at both of those as we're picking things and working near a school, that's otherwise what we try to accomplish. We would prioritize areas near schools higher than other areas in our capital improvements planning. Sometimes we've even gone above and beyond what was recommended in the Safe Routes to School plan. Bannock School would be an example of that. At the time, they're talking about urban shoulder to work within existing constraints. We added sidewalk one side and path on the other, with the thought process being the age of the children walking there, a painted white line, not really the ideal solution for that. So trying to get separation there for them to be able to walk to school. So again, yes, always looking to others to see what Rutherford is doing. Some of the hiccups we have is since it's more than just the infrastructure in which we do, and some of these things are kind of, for the schools themselves to try to accomplish well. There's a lot in those. I think one of the biggest challenges that we do have is really sticking in part to the routes, and I think one of the things that could happen is we should really review the routes, because part of what the outcome of that is to try to identify these safe routes and try to direct people there. And I can actually have an example, of that. How do we end up, where we are? PJ Jacobs, there's rectangular RFBs. There at the end of college. However, I believe, as I recall, the Safe Routes to School, was directing people to cross, Michigan at the existing signals where there, are walk, don't walk signals, push button to do that. And it was after probably about 2 years of trying to work with the school district on that. Eventually, it just went to our consulting engineer and said, in close proximity, will these work here? They came back with a little reluctance, says they should, work with the signals. So we put those in, but in part simply because no one was following the routes. I mean, the routes were set up. Routes said, this is the route you get there. When you get to this point in time, you walk to the signal to do that. But we know human nature isn't the fact that we want to walk out of our way. So there's always a dynamic there in a discussion, and could there be more? There probably could be, but there is ongoing discussion with the school district as things come up. Some things we can more easily address than others. Right now, one of our biggest challenges coming out of COVID is, the amount of automobile traffic that's now congested, near schools. It seems if you're not on the bus, you don't walk to school, you get a ride, one way or the other. And I think even school buses seem to, I know for a while, I don't know what the instance is at the moment, school buses, because bus drivers were hard to come to, routes were expanded, buses got crowded, kids didn't want to necessarily get up maybe a half an hour earlier than you did the year before to get on that bus. So there's been a lot of changes and things that we've had to adapt to. So it's definitely, I'd say if anything, it's time to probably revisit the plan is really where we need to go. But believe me, we do look, much like we do at the bike and ped plan, we look at that as we're trying to implement things. There's a lot more sidewalk, like I said, by Bannock School, there's a lot more sidewalk by Pacelli Middle School. There's more sidewalk by Pacelli High School. I'm trying to think other schools we've recently worked at, but we've purposely tried to target several of them where we felt there were insufficiencies there, and try to correct those and make the infrastructure out there better for everyone, following what the recommendations were in the plan.
I'll add to, if at any point the school district's looking to perform improvements within or on school grounds, that is one area where we've Scott and I have been pretty active with collaborating with them of what you can actually do and making sure that it's in alignment with the Safe Routes to School plan. Scott alluded to this earlier, but the last time that the school district had a referendum, it included site improvements to Bannock, to McKinley, and Madison elementary schools. And so during that time, there was a lot of communication back and forth with the school district, with the civil team in producing the plans to make sure it's consistent with the Safe Routes to School plan. And because of how our zoning code was structured, and is still structured today, those site plans had to go before council for approval. So at least there was the accountability as well, where if our elected officials had questions of, why was or wasn't the Safe Routes to School plan followed in that particular development proposal for the school, then there's that accountability as well.
So our director of public infrastructure is the owner of the maps for safe routes to school and works with the school districts to create and update those on a schedule. And we've identified that we need to update those, and I'm wondering about timing and process.
So we talked maybe within the last, maybe it was a half a year ago, we've communicated with the school district about, hey, would you, we recognize the need for, we as a city, for updating the Safe Routes to School plan. You as a school district, do you agree, do you concur with that, yes or no? And then if so, their stance was yes, they do want to see it. There was back and forth discussions as to the funding of it. At that time there was some grant out there, I forgot exactly what it was that we were looking at potentially applying for, and it just ended up becoming a timing constraint, at least for that yearly application cycle, and trying to square away who's going to cover the local match requirement. But there's definitely it's definitely recognized amongst both sides, city and the school district, that we want to update it. It's just a matter of, I think, being more deliberative on our part to try to coordinate that going forward. And obviously the county and the village of Plover as well, since ideally if you're looking to do a Safe Routes to School plan update, we would focus on the school district as a whole and all the jurisdictions where those school districts are located, instead of focusing just on schools within the city of Stevens Point corporate boundary, ideally, obviously.
I guess my only comment on that would be, most of the plan is done or undoable at this point. But with the education portion, when I was talking to the schools, most of them had almost all of them but one, had no idea what I was talking about, and I think they could easily still be implementing those things without an updated plan.
For sure.
No, that's a very valid point. I think a big part is, we're talking to people that weren't there back in 2014. They're not even aware, in many cases, that the plan exists.
The only reason one knew is because she was a teacher before she was a principal, so she remembered it from when she was a teacher.
And, for any larger places of employment, just to state the obvious, there tends to be a siloed structure in terms of information that's disseminated. At least the communication that we had with the school district was more within their administration. Is that information about, hey, we have the Safe Routes to School plan, here's where it is, here's the recommendations for each individual schools. Is that being disseminated down the chain of command?
The answer is no, as I am.
My assumption would be no, but.
And is that because they're so out of date that they're not relevant anymore, in addition to the staffing turnover and lack of knowledge?
More so the latter. Are there some recommendations of that plan that are out of date? Yeah, but I think that's one of the misconceptions for older plans, regardless of topic. I'll say our comprehensive plan being another example for the city, is that because it's old, it doesn't mean that every single recommendation is out of date, not reminiscent of what we as a school district or we as a city want to see going forward. Are there improvements? Are there updates that are needed? Yeah, but really going to the heart of your question, it's more the latter, in my opinion, just the education and the dissemination of it.
And I would concur with that. I think in many cases, if we look back since 2014, and specifically to schools, I don't think there's been significant changes that otherwise occurred that would otherwise influence some of the recommendations that were made. We're starting to transition into that. Again, I'll go back to Bannock School, but with the Forest Creek subdivision, and other lands for sale out there that could be developed in the coming years, we're starting to see an influence there that, will impact that. There are areas there, even through Forest Creek, there's no sidewalks. It's like some of that should be incorporated in that. As families move in there, we need to make sure that we update the plan. But in many cases, I don't see that there's been significant changes, that I think the recommendations that were made 10 years ago are still valid today. We could repackage it, put a new date on it, but I think a lot of the plan would be very similar to what was existed. Now, there's still value in that, and a big part simply because, chasing some of the grant dollars that can go along with that, simply the date on the cover, does make a difference and can be impactful. If it's out of date, they don't know, whoever you're trying to get grant dollars from, they don't know what's changed. They assume that something has changed and it needs to be, only so long before you have to toss one in the garbage and put another one on the shelf, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that it's multiple organizations that need to be involved in updating those. For me, it's an imperative. The fact that entire generations of families have gone through our local elementary and junior high public school education system, and no principal has ever said to them, oh, you live 3 blocks that way and you're going to be walking? This is the route we'd like to show you. Here's a map with the folder going home in the beginning of the school year, right? Like, the fact that that is not something that I know to happen in our community, if you believe in the plans that are on the shelf, that is concerning to me, and I would love to see that cross-organizational effort emphasized in early work as we get this on the shelf.
I think that happened to me like once.
Oh, did it? I'm happy that happened to you once.
My eldest is 13, so it probably happened when she was like in kindergarten or first grade.
Okay.
That was at Jefferson?
Yeah, Jefferson.
Jefferson.
Hey, at least it happened.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Kind of shifting gears. For the various sections of the plan that I'm going to be highlighting, I'm also going to include the chunk of the table of contents on there, just in case you folks are following along. So next one, for any long-range plan, one of the questions that has to be answered, at least in my opinion, early on, is the why. Why, in this case, why are we looking to create a bicycle and pedestrian plan? What's the point? What's the intention behind it? What's in it for me as a resident of Portage County? Why should I care about the fact that we have a plan like this? And so this infographic on the right-hand side of the screen, that's on page 36 of the agenda packet. I think this explains it really nicely of the case for biking and walking and all the arguments for why that is beneficial, that us as City of Stevens Point residents and other stakeholders should emphasize that in our day-to-day lives. There's a lot more that's visible and not as visible as it relates to the benefits and the need for encouraging biking and walking going forward. Next section, so this is the existing conditions section, starting on page 25 of the plan. This is really the number crunching, all the data, the two figures that I have on the screen, figures 4.1 and 4.2. This is coming from the census, talking about, I think this is the data that's pretty useful to know early on, that really helps guide what policy recommendations are being proposed later on in this report. And that's saying these two graphs are showing the mode share for those who commute by bicycle and those who commute by walking from point A to point B, separated by various jurisdictions in Portage County and then larger geographical areas. And not surprisingly, point is higher than average compared to our peer municipalities in the county, and actually higher than the aggregate urban areas located in the state of Wisconsin and then also the state as a whole. Bicycle and pedestrian facility types, I didn't include any snapshots in here, but that's starting on page 35. This is basically engineering commentary that I'm sure Scott can touch on if there's any questions about particular facility types for bike infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure, but this is really helpful to provide a brief overview of what those different facility types are, because later on in this report, they'll reference a lot of these in more detail. Next section, this is section 6, starting on page 47 of the plan. This is really the meat of the document. So any long-range plan, the meat of that plan is the GOPS, the goals, objectives, and policy recommendations.
I'm not following where you are in here. Is this?
So page 47 of the plan.
There's like his print pages, and then there's the document pages.
Yeah, lower left-hand side
Yeah.
is where apologies.
It took me a minute too. I was like, why are we not at the same page?
Yeah.
You know,
Usually it's on the lower right, but we wanna, I guess if that's a suggestion you wanna change, have it be on the lower right. I mean, that's a fair recommendation.
I've been going by the page number, not following that, okay?
So I don't have on the slides here all the unique policy recommendations. I'm going to just leave it on the floor if there's any particulars. But so this chapter of the plan, the vision, goals, and strategies, are broken up into 6 different goals. Goal A being to strengthen connections between neighborhoods, parks, schools, employment centers for bicyclists and pedestrians. Number 2, focusing on enhancing and maintaining bike ped infrastructure. Number 3, this is really the conversation that we just had over the last few minutes, is enhancing intergovernmental cooperation and coordination related to transportation facilities across Portage County. Number 4 being to provide adequate bike ped education, encouragement, and enforcement efforts targeted at high-risk activities by all road users. This is the type of goal that's going to correlate quite well with the safety action plan when you're talking about the different triggers or different situations that may contribute to a corridor be considered a high injury network. Things such as excessive speeding or some of our habits behind the wheel of texting while driving or driving while impaired, situations like that. Goal letter E would be to develop branded loop bicycling routes and trails to raise Portage County's profile as a destination for bicycle tourism, similar when we're talking about the maps. And then goal F being to evaluate and assess bicycling and walking in Portage County and monitor the implementation of this plan. Really the evaluation, kind of the last standard section in any long-range plan, outlining strategies that a community should pursue in making sure this plan is being followed and is still up to date as new trends and new strategies emerge in the years that come. So, like I said, there's a lot of policies in here that we don't have enough time to necessarily cover, but I'm going to open up to the floor if there's any questions, clarifications, concerns that you have with this section of the plan.
On here, I don't know if this is relevant, but as I was reading it, I didn't see anything about this. Would there be any way that we could, this might be overshooting, but make it a suggestion to put it in the curriculum for driver's education? Because I'm sure they go over when you see somebody walking, you stop at the crosswalk because they have the right of way. You don't want to hit them. Mm-hmm. But there are what do you do if you come to an intersection, there's a bike and there's a pedestrian and there's another car, and what do you do? Who has the right of way? Mm-hmm. Just bring up.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. I know that is an item being talked about in the safety action plan. I'm just skimming, so skimming through the policy recommendations under goal D, so providing adequate bicycle and pedestrian education, encouragement, and enforcement efforts. I feel like that's probably the goal that's most closely aligned with what you're describing, Carolyn. So I'll make a note of it. I'll kind of skim through these policy recommendations in more detail. If these policy recommendations don't address it, then yeah, I think that's a reasonable inclusion. Any other thoughts?
I wrote down about complete streets when I was reading through this, like, would there be, because it talks about the vision including having complete streets policies, and I was wondering about if they would be like separate per like city, like Stevens Point versus Portage County, or versus Plover, or whatever other cities in the plan. I mean, we're all in the plan, but
Yeah.
if there's going to be one where we should all kind of be on the same page and have the same complete street policy, or are we all going at it on our own, or is the county going at it? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'll have Scott chime in at least as the non-engineer in the room. My assumption is that if there's a benefit of having consistency, but I don't know if there's a reason why there shouldn't be.
Not sure there's a reason why there shouldn't be. I think different municipalities will take different approaches in that, but that should probably still be within the basic framework that's we all agree upon. I think that really that's going to be coming more so just how this other project is split. That's really part of the safety action plan more than it is part of the bike ped plan, because it is part of it. In fact, that's what I was doing before I came here, is going through several of the things, because it's trying to get my comments together. Is I want that plan to more so elaborate on that. So I was spending a lot of time reading Montgomery County. I don't even know the state, didn't even look at it. Beautiful, complete streets plan. It's exactly what I would love to have. Breaks down every type of street, puts the general parameters and stuff on it. You could nearly use that as the base, if you can highlight what the street is and the context of the street is, I think we could all sit down with a copy of it if we knew that, and we would all come up with the exact same design, plus or minus minor variations. But we'd all quickly agree on what it is that we want to do given the context that it is and the functional description of what that street is. But I think that's really become, I think it being mentioned in here that it's worth a mention, but I think it's really going to be more so drilled down in the safety action plan than it will be in this one.
So there's going to be a new complete streets plan? Because I think
that's going to be coming, and that's what I'm working on with the safety action plan, yes, to try to get there and use that as an impetus to try to move complete streets forward, to actually come up with a plan similar to this one. Like I said, I was drooling over, before coming to the meeting.
Love it.
Here. Yes, it was a beautiful, well-written, very detailed plan that I think we would all benefit from having something similar to that. But yeah, I definitely think I mentioned here, but I think more of that's going to come out in the safety action plan.
Okay.
And I will add that was a recommendation, if you recall, in the League of American Bicyclists, the report card that they gave us for the bike friendly community designation. That was one of the recommendations they gave for us as things we should prioritize in the next 4 years.
Okay. So we're being told twice.
Being told twice. But having it in a long-range plan and adopted by the different jurisdictions within Portage County, it helps achieve more buy-in ultimately when we have these more dense, potentially convoluted conversations during that time. Any other thoughts?
On this section, no.
Okay. Then, next one, going to be the non-infrastructure recommendation. So that's starting on page 55 of the plan, lower left-hand corner. So these are essentially, this is the point of the plan when we're covering the 5 E's. For this non-infrastructure recommendation, it's focusing on all the E's with the exclusion of engineering. So the 4, starting out with encouragement, 3 recommendations. Number 1, to prioritize the Wisconsin Bike Challenge to local employers to encourage bicycling and bicycling to work and for other transportation and recreation trips. Number 2, to support and or sponsor local family-friendly events that promote biking and walking. And number 3, focusing on promoting biking and walking at local health and wellness events by hosting, as a reference in here, providing promotional material or hosting a table at a seminar or smaller convention. Education, there's a lot of education recommendations here in the plan, focusing on the I guess the different stakeholders that you want to prioritize. So having events focusing or more oriented towards children, activities oriented towards adults, those, this is kind of addressing the conversation, I think, Nana, you mentioned earlier about providing safety and education materials to the schools and on the county's website to disseminate to other stakeholders as well.
Oh.
Equity and accessibility. So this is I guess a little different structure that they take for this section of the plan. Really, this acts more as a kind of a flow chart, starting out with identifying the infrastructure gaps and needs that we have here in Portage County. And we'll talk about this in the next few slides. And then once those gaps and needs are identified, plan with equity and accessibility in mind. So prioritize, look at all the different stakeholders who utilize those means of transportation, and then try to keep those in mind when you're plotting out the engineering of those areas. And then lastly, applying the equity and accessibility to non-infrastructure improvements as well. And then lastly, the evaluation section, again, focusing more on the implementation and the follow-through of this plan in the years that come. There's a number of these, number of the policy recommendations that would have some semblance to this commission and the work that you folks do. I think the big one that we prioritize first and foremost in writing the grant application to fund this program is to create this advisory committee on the county level, which has already been created, and having that committee continue on post-adoption of this plan to focus on the administration and the implementation of this going forward. So kind of have that all but completed. Obviously, there's work that you folks as a city bike ped commission can do as well to make sure that the city-specific recommendations are being accomplished year over year. So again, going to kick it back to the group with any comments, issues, concerns for the non-infrastructure recommendations.
I wonder about an annual meeting of those groups, right? Some sort of a summit. I imagine that staff meet regularly, but if there is a new committee on the county side that is meant to help shepherd this forward, I'm not sure who they report up to and what staff support that committee, but I'd love to see some synergy be across the groups, whether that's an accountability sort of annual report and gathering, or looking ahead at shared programs. Again, I imagine a lot of this happens at the staff level, but then
So are you thinking like
it's hard to stay in the loop.
Are you thinking like a joint, a gathering amongst this commission, that county commission, any other work that the various municipalities do of kind of bringing everybody into a room? Is that
Yeah,
what you're thinking?
I would welcome that.
That sounds awesome. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
If we can co-write this plan,
Yeah.
we might co-accountability ourselves
Yeah.
around the plan.
No, I like that.
It's a verb.
Love it.
I like that a lot.
I don't see this on your agenda, but at the end, there is an appendix related to funding. I didn't see Knowles Nelson and a few other common sources. Maybe I'm not as in the know. I was just surprised by some that were missing. I didn't know if staff contributed to that or if that was from the consultant.
Is there a particular page in the appendix? Or the charts at the end?
F, Appendix F, funding opportunities.
I see. I think, at least me, I didn't contribute much to the funding locations. I don't know if Scott, I don't think we really covered this section with Jackie, right?
A different Jackie.
Yes, sorry, Jackie from
Okay,
Vanderwall.
that's okay.
Sorry.
I just, no. I had a little pause there. Okay, so that might not have gotten our attention. So I wonder if you and your teams, so Knowles Nelson is the one that jumped out at me as a pretty significant funder of Portage County infrastructure, like the Green Circle, other paths along waterways, boat landings in the county like Lake Emily, right? Like that, it has funded a significant amount of projects that are relevant, and it's not listed here, so I wonder what else is missing.
That's a good point. And is that just local, just restricted to this region of the state, or is it a statewide program?
It's a statewide stewardship fund that has contributed millions just in Portage County in the last 30 years.
Okay. Yeah, I can bring that up to Jackie, Vanderwall Jackie, and ask maybe maybe ask her thought process and how she came up with these funding sources.
Circling back to encouragement of recommendations.
Yeah.
The one thing, Stevens Point doesn't really have many biking events, which would be, because I participate in around the state, different rides and stuff. And we have this beautiful Green Circle Trail. And there used to be, I think it was the Y sponsored a duathlon, which had a run and a bike ride, which I participated in, mostly the bike part because I don't run. But you know, how does that? And I realize it takes money, it takes volunteers, but where does one begin? You know, that if the city somehow, again, I'm just throwing it out there, would come up with something, you know, and like a ride. The Green Circle's kind of narrow to have a major ride. You know, they do have the Walk Wisconsin, which is walking. But as far as a ride around the city, you know, I'd participate and I'd volunteer. But, you know, we haven't, like I do, Janesville has a pie ride, which we do. Of course, Door County, which has a Century. All over the state, if you get the Wisconsin Bike Fed puts out every year a thick catalog, which all the different rides, you know, like
Ride across Wisconsin.
Yeah, right across. Again, too much for me, but but it's pretty cool. You know, I imagine Vilas County must hit you if anybody's ever ridden the Heart of the Vilas Trail. It's 52 miles of paved. You know, it goes all the way from Boulder Junction up to. I forget what town it is, but you know, it's paved all the way. The point I'm trying to get at is just that would certainly encourage more participation in biking. It's not everybody's going to do races or rides, but they're just kind of fun ride, you know.
Yeah, and that's where I'm thinking. So obviously, I think the most would agree that that's a super welcoming policy recommendation to pursue going forward. I think the questions that percolate shortly thereafter is, how do you get it done?
How do you get there?
Yeah,
That's exactly,
and that's where I think
That's
maybe we
exactly.
could spell out like a process of, okay, here's some first steps that you take to try to coalesce.
And then get a few sponsors, you know, because there obviously there has to be, you know, a date.
Well, I think there's value in mapping out what we're trying to achieve through the event. Is it a destination weekend for out-of-towners? Is it an orientation to locals, like new university students or young adults who live here, who moved here to work for Century, who never biked the Green Circle, and let's do a lap together so you can get oriented, right? Like what, I think if we can figure out what population we're trying to target, what we build and the when and how we advertise it becomes a little bit more obvious, because there are a lot of groups of people that we might target for education, and I'm not sure which is the most pressing.
Because you can have, you know, you can have an event, but then you can also present the education part. you know, they mentioned a bike rodeo, so you would have a, you know, a cycle shop who'll do some, you know, check the
Tune-ups.
tires and et cetera, you know. And again, like you said, Adam, how do you get there? How do you start? But it's just something to, you know, throw out there.
Yeah, and I like the strategy that you're presenting, Jackie, of kind of picking a vein that you want to prioritize.
Picking an audience, because then, you know, if it's little kids and getting them used to riding for the first time safely, right? Like a bike rodeo is a great idea. If we have goals for young professionals, commute by bike, right? Like there are meetups and ways to do that. So I think it depends on what some of our goals are.
You
Yeah.
probably got to walk before you run and something like that. Like you said, like a rodeo and maybe a small ride or something. And because a lot of these rides initially started small and they just, you know, year after year they get bigger, you know.
Yeah, because
But-
when I'm pulling up rather the chart, the case for biking and walking, I feel like one of the strengths here in the county is the programming that we have within our Portage County Health Department and similar agencies, kind of tying in this case, the case for biking and walking and the health impacts, the health benefits that relate from that. Like I said, there's a lot of existing programming focusing on this area already that I think could be an easier structure for an event that you're thinking of, Tom.
Well,
Some good food for thought.
they could just do like an event like that kind of, it starts out like, excuse me, starts out with like a bike rodeo, and then it has throughout like the day or the weekend or whatever, it has like more advanced, you know, till it goes for like a ride for adults, advanced. Like,
Well, the hostel shop has that big recumbent rally, which
Right.
is big, but it's focused on that, you know.
Right.
And if you're not a recumbent rider, it's a big event, I think, but,
yeah.
you know, it's just narrow focused on that.
Good suggestion. Anything else? All right, and then I guess the last two areas of the plan that I'd like to prioritize sometime is the two maps. So the first one focusing on the existing and proposed bicycle facilities, and then in a little bit we'll talk about the sidewalk network. I'm gonna pull up the map and I'll zoom in. Oh geez. I hope nobody's looking live. I guess before we get started, Scott, I'm gonna pull up the legend here. Can you give just a quick overview about the different types of bicycle facilities that are shown here? Shared use path all the way down to rural paved shoulders, just for context for the folks.
Sure, as long as you might have to
Zoom in
remind me,
more?
I'll turn in a little bit more. Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
I can zoom
I was
in.
just at the eye doctor. Apparently, she said I could see, but I can't see that. She lied to me.
How about that?
That looks really good. So, yes, so shared use path, you know, is much like this, you know, it's usually a wider path than, say, sidewalk, at least like a minimum of 8 feet, maybe as wide as 12 feet or more. For that, within this context, it could be something that's adjacent to the roadway, it could be off right-of-way, but it's otherwise, the best example we otherwise have here, of course, would be the Green Circle Trail. It's used by both pedestrians and bicyclists. Bike lane, urban shoulder are very similar to one another. In its simplest form, you just have, you know, your bike lane delineated by a, you know, white line. Bike lanes are going to have more signage and pavement markings to them. One of the biggest differences between the two, a bike lane just in itself does not allow for parking. An urban shoulder is just the widened portion to the edge of the road is an urban shoulder. It may or may not have parking restrictions to it, so you may be sharing that space with parked vehicles depending upon where it's located. Protected bike lanes can take a variety of different looks. So from bike lanes, just the painted line there. It could be somewhat of a buffered, which could be the, pavement markings in of itself. We have several examples of that. To the next step above yet, which is still in protected bike lanes, could be a physical barrier. If you remember our demonstration activities from the SS4A here over last winter, we had some protected bike lanes recreated temporarily as part of that on Water Street and again at Michigan Avenue, where we put up flexible delineators to create a physical barrier separating motor vehicles from bicyclists in the bike lane. Shared lane markers, we have a number of examples of these. This is really just kind of the standard approach to bicycles on the road. But what it otherwise does is it puts signage there to remind drivers to share the road. It might say, bicyclists may use full lane, something like that. And it may also then include some pavement markings, which are usually just the bike symbol with the arrows on it, which are strategically placed based upon whether there's parking in that vicinity or not, and that's supposed to help identify lateral placement for bicyclists as they travel through the roadway, so hopefully they're otherwise visible, as well as just a reminder to motorists, where they should expect to find bicyclists as they're driving through. A signed bike route may not really have anything other than just a sign, and we've seen the signs there, the green signs that we otherwise have indicating where various things are. There may not be any sort of dedicated facility on those roads. They're simply just signs saying bike route, and then they'll have wayfinding signs to direct people where they're going. Rural paved shoulder, very much so like what we would consider the urban shoulder, only of course in the rural context, there certainly wouldn't be curb gutter. They're often, they can vary in width depending upon the actual geometry of the roadway, often 4 feet or more. It's just really kind of that extra paved space beyond the traveled way for motor vehicles. Available for bicyclists to operate more safely than being in the high-speed traffic flow of rural roadways. Any questions on any of that? It was pretty quick.
Not on the concepts or topic or types, but a few questions on the map.
Yeah, just 2 quick points, just for clarification for you folks. So the solid colored lines are existing facilities, whereas the dashed lines, again, different colors, are what's being proposed. And then the second one is, this is the one area where it would be within our purview to look at areas slightly beyond the city's corporate boundary, but still in our potential areas that as a city would expand outward, that at some point in the future could be located in the city. So think of, the 2 areas, or kind of the east side of town, some of the areas that Scott and I looked at and providing some recommendations to Vanderwall was the old Highway 18 route, the connection of Jefferson Street with, forgot that north-south segment, I don't think it's Badger, but just east of where Scooter's Coffee is, the car wash facility on the south side of Highway 10, when we're looking at Berlowski Road, kind of by the Forest Creek subdivision. So just wanted to make that point that this is a time where if there's areas just outside of the city's boundary that you want to provide some recommendations for, this would be a perfect time to state those.
So you're thinking of like a protected bike lane or a path or from that on that stretch?
For Belowski or for?
For going out to Badger, Badger.
Yeah, so that was the red. So that was the bike lane urban shoulder. Are you looking at the bike or the? Sorry, you're looking at the sidewalk.
Oh.
So it's page on the lower right. It'd be page 100 of the packet.
Okay.
We'll be getting to that in a little bit.
Lower
Sidewalk.
right.
So definitely
Okay.
keep that
Now the
up.
lower right. Gotcha.
So
I got it.
so just want to make those points clear. So I guess I'll
There.
jump over to Jackie now since you have
Right
some.
here, how close to the
suggestions.
village.
Yeah, I'm
Park Ridge.
seeing a bike lane or an urban shoulder delineated as currently existing on West River Drive, and I wonder if the current structure meets that definition, and I'm also wondering if we can speak to the future vision of the north, central, and south portions of Division Street and how they're delineated on the plan map.
Scott?
So for West River Drive, it would be accurate to say on one side, there is an urban shoulder.
So,
On the west side of West River Drive, opposite the river, when we restriped it, we extended that shoulder to create what would be technically an urban shoulder.
okay, thank you. And then Division Street, in the middle section I'm seeing, and it could just be my eyes, gray, no improvement planned, kind of south of 4th and north of Madison.
Yeah.
That is correct.
That is accurate. So
Yes.
the bike infrastructure on that stretch is not designed to be anything, and folks would ideally move off of Division Street, but could bike north and south of that central section, we'll call it.
Correct. And in this particular case, because, there are others, and this isn't design level, of course, but because of all the planning we've done for Division Street, we're well aware of the constraints we always have there. So in talking with Van de Waal and that, there's no reason to put it there because we know it won't fit. So the idea is we had them already looking towards what are the off-street routes, which AECOM had taken a cursory look at, asked them like, what should those routes be to get around that section where we're not going to be able to put in either an urban shoulder or a bike lane?
And that was kind of going to be my follow-on question right at the roundabout on North Point. There's sort of bike paths that are parallel to or off of and suggest a route for someone biking so that you don't enter a 2-lane roundabout, right? Like there's a separate, so I'd love to see, I can't wait to see future plans for how we route people so that we don't end up with bikers where we haven't designed infrastructure to keep them safe.
Yeah, Scott, would you, since this was a conversation you and I, along with Van de Waal Jackie, have had for a while, can you elaborate on Wyatt Ave and kind of the thought process we have had of that being the connector for folks who would want to utilize Business 51?
And can you point out what, just parallel on the east? Okay,
Yep,
thanks.
yep. Right
Yes.
there.
Yes, because there's in essence, if you're taking Division Street, Church Division Street, and through that middle section, and because of the ways that the road's otherwise angled, there's two ways you're otherwise going to go. One is you're probably going to go down, say, Church Street or one of those other roads heading towards downtown. If you're otherwise continuing north, which is, more so what we've been, working with that, the intent, although it doesn't go as far north straight through once you get to Main Street is maybe ideal, is to then utilize Wyatt. This was also the route, suggested by AECOM during their planning portion to do that. In the recent reconstruction, even of Madison Monroe and a little bit of Wyatt between there, we did otherwise incorporate that, expanding the curb lines a little bit to allow room for bicyclists to operate in there. So we've kind of started that path already with the little work we've otherwise done, anticipating that would be, there would at least be shared lane markings through there.
So for someone on a bike traveling north and south, we envision a safe route to get either downtown or south from downtown, to get north to, say, the university and back south from the university back down to Church, and having those smooth and connected, and getting them off of that center section of, that's great. It wasn't obvious to me on this future plan map what that vision was or where those markings would be, so I'm hearing Wyatt. Church doesn't go all the way through, but if you pick it up further south, Water Street does or would. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And one point I'll add for the adoption of the plan, I know Van de Waal's working on an interactive map showing all of this instead of it just being on a 8.5 by 11. So I know it's there's a lot of colors, a lot of moving parts here. So
There is, and our city is complicated. Let's just own that.
Yeah.
It's like these are old streets and old ways that used to, right, get people to industrial or trading sections near the river and near downtown. It makes sense that it's not straightforward, that it's complicated. But for people who are new to our community, who are trying to bike safely, like I want it to be as apparent as possible to them so that they don't get frustrated. alignment with Google, bike directions would be nice, right? Like, there's so much that we can do for them to keep them safe and to keep them where we know that they'll do better and be less frustrated. So thanks for your thoughts on that kind of vision for that corridor. I appreciate it.
Did you have any other?
On the map, no.
Okay. Carolyn, Dana, Tom?
No.
No.
Okay. Then the other one will be page 111 of the agenda packet. That will be the sidewalk recommendations. So. That's where you were. Yep, that's where you were.
I'm in the right page.
So this is a more straightforward map, less colors, less things going on, showing existing shared paths and sidewalks along with what's proposed for sidewalks going forward. So this would be in the yellow, orange, or red solid lines, and those colors are differentiated by the level of priority for those sidewalks being installed. Yellow being low level priority, orange being medium, and then red being high. Again, I'll kick it back to the group. If there's areas not identified for sidewalk that you think ought to be, love to hear it. Conversely, if there's areas identified for sidewalks that you don't think it's appropriate, love to hear it. If there's areas proposed for sidewalks that you think should have a lower or higher priority level, this is a great time to have that conversation, especially the latter point, the prioritization. That's been a lot of back and forth that Scott, Vanderwall, Jackie, and I have had over the last several weeks and months. So kick it back to the group for thoughts.
For those of us who are less familiar with the geography of the future Plover River crossing, I'm seeing lots of yellow that I think will kind of be connecting. I don't know that part of town quite as well. Can someone summarize sort of the vision of the connectivity once that path is in?
Yeah, so that's something that I think that was really the basis for recommending this yellow, or this
Long way, is that Gala?
yeah, Gala, and that's Gala for this stretch as well. But yeah, and Brolowski is between connecting the Plover River crossing and also just being cognizant of future housing units being constructed, not only for Forest Creek, but Scott referenced earlier, the 40-acre lot just north of there has been listed for sale for probably a couple weeks or months now, that I think it's reasonable at some point in the future that'll be developed. And so just being cognizant of the amount of additional populations within this area, now's the time that we need to have that conversation. And especially this east side of town was arguably the area of most focus for, at least on my end, just being cognizant of future growth opportunities and the different land uses that could be located here. There's a lot of conversation about between us and our county highway department about HH, really from Phelps Ave all the way to, once you get to Brolowski, really how that corridor should function for pedestrians, knowing you have a significant man-made object dividing that corridor right down the middle, that object being Interstate 39. So there's been I'd say generally speaking, again, it's the east side of town, areas east of McDill Pond is really the area of higher priority that we focus. There's a few areas within the really west of McDill Pond, more towards the core of the city, that have some new recommendations. The Green Ave corridor, the Stanley Street corridor we have for the north side of Stanley Street from I don't know what that would be. Would that be Minnesota possibly? No, not Minnesota.
It's further east than that.
Yeah, it's whatever the north-south road is, one block east, it looks like, of Minnesota. So Minnesota all the way down to Green, and then Michigan Ave once you get north of North Point towards Century. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Scott?
I guess maybe just to start things off, I just wanted to highlight a few of the changes that I had sent to them or suggestions that I had, in case your others have that. One of them is a very general comment. If you will look at this figure as it is today, the shared youth path just mimics the Green Circle Trail, which isn't actually accurate in all locations. Sometimes it actually just follows the road because there isn't, a dedicated trail at the moment. So I asked them to confirm that and adjust the figure accordingly where that occurs, so we're not misleading the reader in what facilities exist there, as well as then it'll help us also identify some of the gaps that exist within there so we can work towards completing those. We have a good visual of that. In addition to that, some of the things that I highlighted, and I'd really like some feedback from all of you, is one is Pinecrest. Wilshire over by Metro Market, the other side there, again, Metro Market is a destination. I think within that, they also highlight some stuff. They highlight, Jefferson, which I totally agree with you. I think that should probably be wrapped around the corner up Pinecrest. There is some existing sidewalk on the east side. The right-of-way, depending upon where you are, can be very tight, especially to the north where it transitions to Wilshire. But I do think that would be a valuable addition to what they're recommending. I see some heads nodding and stuff, so
I don't know the space well enough to have I trust your judgment. Do you live closer to that?
I go in that direction to go shopping. I go behind Metro Market, so I drive past it. I know my kid runs it, or used to run it when she was at Jefferson.
What
think
was
I'll
your request?
Well, just wondering, opinions, because it's one of the things that I had highlighted to Vanderwall. They don't show anything otherwise there. I think it's actually a relatively high priority that sidewalk be added there in addition just for, school-age children that may live in the neighborhood that may go to Washington School. A lot of them do cross at that signal, the lights, so making sure that we're funneling them, as safe as possible through there. They highlighted Jefferson, which I would agree with. They're next to Sheridan. To wrap that around. Another one that maybe is a little bit more or maybe I should say less substantiated, maybe more opinionated, would be Leahy, north of Heffron, between Heffron and Industrial Park Drive. I know that general neighborhood gets a lot of use. We do get occasional complaints from people in that. Most of them actually do come from Heffron about just the fact that the lack of space for people to go and the speed of vehicles and the volume of vehicles that travel through those. It's not necessarily, I think Leahy is the more predominant one, but I thought that one should really be kind of a higher priority in my opinion.
And there's recently approved new building in that general area that might actually increase that problem, right?
For, it'd be the corner of Hoover and Heffron. That was, I think, 17
A pretty
lots.
dense, yeah. Scott, I think those are all great ideas.
Ew.
Do you need us to support you in some way to influence
I
Vanderwall?
figured if there was any, at least open for discussion on what it is, someone might have that, or maybe thinking it might spark someone else's idea that, hey, that reminds me of. There was actually one deletion I wanted to at least bring up with the group there, or potential, which is Sandy Lane, just, south of Bannock School. At least as far as the priority, I wouldn't disagree that we can otherwise add sidewalk, but on an area with, little traffic, though I will admit it does pick up a little bit during, the school days, students will get dropped off and come down that way.
So north-south
yep,
segment?
Is that one. They had a higher priority in their initial draft to us. I was the one who asked that it be, considered. I didn't say downgraded. I said, consider that, all factors. I guess, does anyone have a difference of opinion to what that is? Because it is otherwise, generally isolated. It gets, little use. I think this is a situation, all else again being equal, I can see many other places that I would prioritize higher than these 2 blocks of Sandy. For example, the Wildwood there coming off of Highway 10, much more so. I just can't quite put them in my mind, in the same category of importance. But again, that was kind of their initial recommendation. I don't know if anyone has a difference of opinion to that. I don't
know enough about the school drop-off and pickup comings and goings, and whether Windy is used as sort of a flow out. If memory serves, they drive from east to west and then continue out of the school going that way. So I wonder if folks are cutting through there to get back to 10.
I think some of them, yeah. It's been a while since I looked at, but yeah, some of them do, in fact.
Because that's the angle that they're pointed out at after drop-off. Yeah.
And in my mind, it was more or less just trying to differentiate between them and not categorically putting them all in, even though it's proximity to the school. I do see some of the other ones. So if I'm trying to prioritize in my mind where we'll spend future capital dollars, it seems like I've got other areas that I think I'd concentrate on first before doing that, because I think the roadway, as it is generally accommodating just to the lesser amount of traffic, and honestly the fewer students, because they're localized students to that. So the number of students that are walking that corridor, are less than in other areas.
It's absolutely more of a bus in school than a neighborhood school like Jefferson would be. Yeah. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other.
I really don't. I feel like that'd be a better question for the school. They would know.
They would know.
Yeah.
And then I think 2 others. One, I think, and they've otherwise changed that, is, ensured that they had all the sidewalk that was otherwise anticipated for Division Street. They had originally missed a couple of segments there. And then the last one I had was Rice Street between Church and I believe it's Blaine. There.
That's south of the tracks, right?
Yep, right. Yeah, right there, right in the center there, which is that kind of medium priority there.
Yep.
They otherwise hadn't highlighted it. My thought process here is, one, there has been historically, I'm not sure there is anymore, a crossing guard at this location in the past. So even though there's a sidewalk on the south side, otherwise just trying to direct, children there. With the realignment that we're planning to do with Whiting and Rice, it seemed like it was an opportune time to make sure it's highlighted on the plan. So we don't otherwise, of course, miss it. It would be our intentions to try to incorporate that sidewalk into a future realignment of the intersection, which then I think sets itself up to just include that sidewalk further to the east to where the existing sidewalk terminates.
Where is that? The corner of the park?
The corner right there, so that would be where the thrift store is there. There's BMI Auto at the moment. And again, from my perspective, one of the things that we're looking at and AECOM is currently designing is the improvements to Church Street, which includes that realignment. The question is whether or not, are we having them incorporate sidewalk throughout that, on Rice Street? And, in order to get that tied in, it goes back a fair ways. So my thought process is yes, why would we not take advantage of a large project and add a smidgen of cost to a very large project that is going to provide a benefit at really no real, noticeable cost improvement increase to that. But it doesn't make sense if the intent is we're satisfied with sidewalk on the south side. Then I'd just as soon others do it. But that was something I wanted to ask if anyone had an opinion there as well.
I think add it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's good. It's good.
It's there, so add it. But I'd always tell them that we talked more about it, and I said, and I'm always interested in other people's opinions towards these.
I was going to say it kind of goes back to what you're talking about at the beginning, like with how the projects more go with what roads you're working on and incorporate them into the costs. And that kind of makes it confusing with the high, medium, low priority for me. Like even if you consider that medium, if you're working on that and it's not a high priority, you should just do it. I guess, in my opinion.
Right, and I think, where it comes in from my mind is when we're looking at projects, it's a matter of essentially inclusivity and how far do we say go outside our project boundaries to then, potentially connect those. So maybe in essence, an example would be like if we agreed here that we thought it was really a low priority, it might even be a matter of that I'd have AECom anticipate a future sidewalk, but maybe we wouldn't put it in now until we had another project that would connect it all the way to the end. A medium as it is there, we will probably stop at the end of this current project limits and we would look to fill that gap that remains. If we thought it was a high priority, I would look for ways to try to make that connection all at one time. We're going to do part of it under the project. All right, now we need to find a creative way. How do we extend the project limits to at least get that sidewalk in, even though we're not redoing the road? And I'd spend more time looking at the constraints there to see, is there exactly enough room behind the curb? What other things are there? How do we get in? And I would try to accomplish that as part of it. That's in part my mindset of how I approach these low, medium to highs.
Okay.
If that kind of helps.
That helps.
Me, I'm not saying that's the only way it can be done, but that's oftentimes how I look at that is relative to what we're putting into projects and how we approach those. And so even that, as you're looking at this again, maybe with that kind of as a context, I mean, think about it too, is, would you change any of the priorities, understanding in part how that is some of the roadways are done. A low priority, depending upon funding and stuff, we may make, design for future accommodations. Medium may be kind of sparse to look at it, where then definitely if we have a high, that's going to be a big part of our overall plan to do that. We'll invest more time, money into that, within that budgeting process to ensure that we get there, potentially even expanding the project if that's what it takes to get, that high priority completed.
Okay, then with the metro market area, I personally would consider that also high priority because, people need to get groceries and there's houses back there and.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
But I don't believe there's going to be any street projects back there anytime
right.
soon.
And that's one of them, we otherwise, can look. I think there's actually, room there. I think one of the things that we otherwise have is coming up with Business 51, other planned projects are kind of sliding a little bit just to balance our capital dollars. But I do see, in this particular case, Jefferson coming up in the hopefully not too distant future. So in this case, much like we did with Texas Avenue when we were redoing Algoma, and our project limits essentially stopped at Jefferson, we extended the design of the sidewalk south there just to complete and fill in those gaps. I see something here. We may be working on Jefferson, so at that time, I would look at that adjacent high priority and try to find a way to how do we get that in the fact that we're not necessarily redoing the street, but we would try to design that in, provided there aren't constraints that prohibit us from doing it. If we can work it in, we would try to get those things, put together, essentially looking at it because if it's a high priority, we consider it a high priority.
Right, and the bus stop is there, and a daycare is there.
Right, and I don't know if anyone's ever been back there, because I said, we had gotten the pushback putting that sidewalk in back there before, I said, there's really nobody here, we're the only ones that walk around back here. I don't know if you go back, there's also, there's a bus stop there. There's a lot of people that walk there, and it's surprising even like the number of people in the apartments there south of Texas that will now, walk up that I don't believe really, did before. They found their way there, but now it's like people actually, are using it. I think even some of the residents that were opposed to it before have, come back and said, I can't believe how many people, are actually, using it. It's way more than I ever thought. Don't know where they came from. It's like, well, they probably always wanted to. It just,
Wasn't there.
the challenges are there, and also, and it's like, going through, especially as busted up as that road is, I mean, it was dangerous just walking even if there wasn't traffic, there. So yeah, just otherwise an example, I think, kind of a success story that we've otherwise had. I want to carry it forward, and to your point there, as far as, the destination, I think Metro Market is a big enough destination, and not everybody has an automobile. Not everybody has the means to get around like some of us. So it's like making sure that they can get there, because it's truly someplace that everybody, whether there or, whatever grocery store, it's a necessity of life. And, we need to make sure we're providing the means for everybody to get there.
Not only there, but what influence, if any, can we have over directing the flow of foot traffic or bike traffic once we get within spitting distance of Festival or within spitting distance of Metro Mart? Because it's very car-centered, the design of the kind of outskirts of both of those buildings. There's not a pedestrian walkway that connects the sidewalks that do exist, depending on the angle that you're coming from, with the front door. So do we have any influence as we start to design around those spaces to suggest walkways or other things on, when, not immediately, but maybe when they repave their.
I think Adam, has the ability to at least influence.
I don't know if I'm being clear in my question.
I believe you are.
Yeah, zoning, with the zoning code, current zoning code, there's probably a good 12.5 pages focusing on parking lot layout. And I know there are some communities who prioritize pedestrian flow within a parking lot and having clear designated routes. We don't. So, that's helpful food for thought for me with the code rewrite to try to work that into this.
Yeah, I bike really comfortably to Metro Mart, and I just go where a car would until I get to the front of the store, and then I cross and I park my bike at the bike rack. But if I tried to do that on foot, I don't know how I would, would I walk along the road by the bank and then cross over out there, or, try to walk the whole parking lot from the laundromat in the back? It doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
No, and it doesn't. I know I'd say, gosh, I don't know how many, probably the majority of times that I've been there exiting then on Pinecrest. I've seen pedestrians, in fact, the majority of them that I've seen, I'd say are minors, walking in the road, and even of late, they're bundled up, and, who really has a reflective jacket? Everybody has a black jacket. Everyone here is a little bit different, but, just simply the general public, everybody's got a black jacket.
Yeah.
And they're very difficult to see. And trying to separate them out, and from a place where I think people should be expecting to see pedestrians in those destination places, parks, schools, grocery stores.
Right.
I'm just not sure everybody's paying attention, so we need to do what we can do to make sure that they're safe.
They should they should wear something reflective, especially in December in Wisconsin. Yeah, absolutely. But also, if we can concentrate them and make the design obvious to where they should
be.
Put those feet,
Exactly.
that will, if it's a striped yellow, whatever, if there's an obvious pedestrian path that guides them and that we can try to, then I think drivers are more aware. So to the extent that this plan and that code rewrite help us to make connections between public and private, I'd just be delighted, because I think both of those major grocery stores in town just have lack of design flow for someone who does not come with a car.
And just anecdotally, Festival is a beast to walk if you're a pedestrian walking from, but the main,
Division?
not Division, the east-west road where you drive into Festival. Academy.
Off Academy.
Taco John's and the
Yeah,
Little Greenhouse, and I don't know what's.
Because not only do you have, you have the depth of travel from road right away to the front door. Anecdotally, I'm assuming it's more even for Festival compared to Metro Market.
They're both
but
bad.
how do you? Yeah.
I've done it. It's a lot.
Okay, well, thanks for entertaining that.
No.
It's not really related.
One last one, I just at least wanted to point out there for anyone that may have an opinion, which is Feltz Avenue. And the reason being, south of Heffron, what they otherwise show is, would be going into the village of Whiting to McDill. And the question I have is, in relation to, does anyone have an opinion? Arguably, because it runs parallel to the Green Circle Trail, many people are going to choose otherwise to use the Green Circle Trail if they can get access to it. So arguably, someone could say it's rather redundant. So really, I still think it's a valuable thing. The question is what does anyone maybe see if you have an opinion related to the priority that it should be? I'd be interested in what people's thoughts.
I would rate it lower.
Yeah.
I live near there, and
Yeah.
Okay.
there's not
Because the benefit of that, of sidewalk, however, is oftentimes is this time of year, with requirements for shoveling. Hopefully people are doing that where, the green space may not be suitable for everybody, But I don't know actually where you're headed if you're going that. I don't live in that area. And I just thought it's just, I think there could be a lot of differences of opinions as far as how
It's
you.
not a thoroughfare. I mean, it's just a neighborhood come through,
Okay.
Which is important, getting out and taking walks in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm supportive of downgrading the importance of that, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that area, sorry. I don't have an opinion.
All right, I guess open up to the floor for any last minute conversations about really the plan in its entirety.
Good work. They did a good job.
So like I said, comments that we talked about today will be relayed over to Vanderwall, as will be the other commentary provided by the other municipalities throughout the remainder of this month and next month. And then kind of rough idea is sometime in spring. I guess before I even get to that, with the changes that you've identified this evening, what's your comfort level about possibly approving the adoption of this next time you see it? Do you want to see, are you comfortable with adopting it next time you see it, or do you want more opportunity for refinement?
I'd say I'm pretty comfortable. You had all the questions prior to the meeting, and if you were looking at my paper, most of it says, no notes, looks good, yes. So, I mean.
Yeah, my minor inquiries, right, are more process and enthusiasm for where we go from here in terms of implementation, and less about the actual details of the plan, right? So, no, I anticipate being in a position to vote on it next time and being enthusiastic about
It's
it.
pretty detailed, Adam. I don't think about that. There's not much left out.
You're saying you want more here.
I think you should.
No, 164 pages works.
Oh, we could make it more. Like I was saying earlier, you might want to attend our plan commission meeting next week if you want more pages. If you want some good sleeping material, learning about floodplain.
No, thank you.
All right, so yeah, like I said, sometime springtime, we'll bring this before you folks for adoption. Likewise, the first draft of the safety action plan. So,
Cool.
that, and golden.
All right, then, with no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.
Videos of these meetings are available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.